great productions create great mixes. I know that might sound fairly obvious, but I do believe it is something that has disappeared off into the ether. If we go back, say, to times of recording, it was, of course, all about recording things live, wasn't it? There would be anywhere from, 3, 4, 5 people in a room to big band to full orchestra. And right at the beginning, it was capturing in mono, let alone stereo. So one mic or multiple sources bus to one mic. Even when it got to stereo, the earlier stereo, there was a limited amount of tracks. So why am I pointing that out? Well, I'm pointing it out because if you had too much low end, too much low mids, you would move that instrument back further away from the mic if it was too muddy and too low midly. As simple as that. You had a limited amount of EQ. So why do I bring that up? I'm not the guy that's talking about a superiority here. It's not about that. It's about understanding that if we record things the way we want to hear them, there's less mixing involved. I know it sounds obvious. A really good illustration for that for me is the Beach Boys. If you get a chance to listen to any of the multitracks, not that I'm saying they're available, or even just listen to, say, Pet Sounds, you'll notice the genius of Brian Wilson was he would record instruments in frequency ranges. He would say bass guitar and tambourine on one track. The Beatles did it as well, because there was the low end and there was the high end on one track. Another track would have instruments that would fit around that. There was such a limited amount of things you could do with 4 or 8 tracks that everything had to work because it was being bounced together. What those guys and girls did is they selected instruments and created parts that would work with each other. So if there was an instrument in a specific frequency range, they would commit to that, and when they would bounce multiple tracks together, they couldn't fix it later. They couldn't say, oh, there's too much low end in this piano with the left hand, and there's too much low end on the bass, now it's just mud. That was it. It was too late. It's bounced together. So it just points to a really straightforward thing. Great production will give you the ability to create great mixes. So what we need to do is choose sounds that are supportive of each other. Find a bass sound that maybe is all just sub. And then if you want to add the grit, take that same maybe MIDI information that you've created to create the sub and trigger another sound. Or maybe take a bass guitar, it's got some drive on it, either the amp's driving or you put some saturation or distortion on the bass, and wipe off the low end and put the two things together. Don't take that bass guitar and expect it to be super full range and that sub and those two things to work together. They will fight each other. There'll be excessive amounts of low end. It's all about making smart decisions as you go along. Rather than just recording, putting tons of parts down and then opening up your session on another day or later on and seeing that you have 142 tracks that all have extended low end and trying to make it all make sense. If you're making those decisions, even if it's just with plugins, it doesn't matter if you're committing, because you can commit by opening a plugin and shaping the EQ. So here we have a sub. This is a keyboard sub. It's pure tone. I suggest listening on a really nice pair of headphones, something that's got enough of a full range. I mean, your headphones should be able to do it. Earbuds may not reproduce the low lows of this. Speakers, something to help you hear it. You won't hear it on laptop speakers, or you might hear half of it. So here is the part. So there's a low A there, it's pretty low. And then we have a bass guitar here. So if we analyze the bass guitar for a second. The bass has got a lot, it's really dominating at around about 80 to 100 hertz. Let's listen to the sub. We'll clear this for a second. The sub is consistently hitting at about 70. Okay, so let's do one of two things. We'll go onto our bass guitar here. It's our live bass guitar. Grab an EQ. We'll engage this at 70. And now the bass, we can probably go a little higher, actually, because you can see here it's not that steep of a high pass, but now the bass is going to have most of what's going on wiped off below. I'll use the Q function here to tighten it. Now let's put those two things together. It's great. I might do this more often. That sub is perfectly filling in that area. And just for those of you who want to know, it's the Absinthe 5. It's a Native Instruments. There's probably plenty of other pure subs you can use, but those two things together is absolutely fantastic. So we're using our ears, but we're also using a frequency analyzer. Now we can go and bring up all the kick drums. So now I've soloed out the kick drums. We'll clear our frequency analyzer. Now this is quite typical, and we talk about this a lot with the low end, is there can be build-up in certain frequencies. And again, in that 80 to 100 area where the bass is really living, there's quite a lot of that on the kick drum. Here's our kick bus, and as you can see, I'm pulling out about 110. So I'm going to bring that down a little lower, to say about 100-ish, and I'm going to widen the Q, like this. I'm also here going to go a little lower, so to about 50, and widen the Q as well. And actually give it a little bit more of a boost. So now I've got a little bit more low-lows going on in the kick. So I'll open this up a little bit, like so, and I'll widen this cut again even more. Kind of a little bit of a game here between the two. Okay, see how that feels. Nice. Bass. Bring in the sub. That's great. Now, there's logic going on there. We're logically shaping those things around each other. I wouldn't say it's math, but it's logic, and we're using a tool. Quite often, let's be honest, you're working in environments where you don't have a sub, or you don't accurately know how the low end is going to work. Now, one of the things that's obviously really important is that we have two different things at play here. We have a bass sub, which is completely consistent. If you just listen to this on its own, listen to this bass sub. I mean, there's a slight initial attack of like a dB lift, but it's just like flatlining.